Right. Anyway. Okay. So, a current world champion fails a drugs test on more than one occasion. The WBC heavyweight champion of the world has his own personal hit list. And are we set for a rematch between two of Britain's long-term rivals in Billy Joe Saunders and Chris Eubank JR? And also a former American president will appear on this Saturday night's commentary team on the Evander Holyfield and Vitor Belfort card. This is Lights Out. I am Faisal Khan, and welcome to this weekly edition of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast. It's our 39th podcast, and as always, I've got a packed house. Delighted to be joined by Team GB prospect, Mr. Aaron Bowen, one of Frank Warren's latest addition to his stable, Macauley Owen, and the guy that looks after him, keeps him busy in the gym, and is a current boxing trader, Mr. Shiney Singh. Lads, good evening to you. How is everybody doing?
Very well, thanks.
Very.
Thank you for having us on.
More than welcome, mate. You're more than welcome. We're glad you guys could join us. Obviously, before we get started, we just want to remind the viewers out there, if they haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and of course, follow us on all the social media platforms. The links are below in the description, and you'll see Shiney, Macaulay's, and Aaron's social media links as well. So give them guys a follow. Make sure you keep up to date with them on social media. Like I said, one's a Team GB prospect and one is currently signed to Frank Warren's Queensberry stable. So exciting times for British boxing, especially when you've got two of Britain's youngest talents on today's platform. Glad to have you guys join us. What we do with every podcast is we like to have a quick fire question. So today's quick fire question is going to be, we'll start off with Macauley, seeing as he signed to the man. What is Frank Warren's best moment in boxing? Macauley, floor's all yours, mate.
Well, you put me on the spot now, haven't you?
Go on, Frank Warren's best moment in boxing.
To be honest, I'm not great with the history books of boxing, but I'd probably say. To be honest with you, I couldn't really tell you.
Come on, it could be any one of Frank Warren's fights that he's promoted. It could be, I don't know, one of his press conferences that he's enjoyed. It could be anything from Frank Warren.
Well, to be honest, I think it's what he's doing at the minute. To be honest, we bringing through as many prospects as he is. He's really taken on board. It's like taking the next step in boxing, really, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Giving the prospects a chance to get them out there. He's taking on a lot more at the minute and pushing them with their fights. So it's giving everyone a chance to get through the ranks, get the coverage they need. I think that's the most exciting thing for boxing at the minute. I'd definitely say that. Takes the limelight away from all the top lads so much, and gives the up and coming lads a chance. And not many promoters have done that across.
I agree. And he's doing a very good job as well, bringing through all this young talent. Aaron, what would you say is Frank Warren's best moment in boxing? Don't be shy. It could be anything. It could be anything that you feel is his best moment.
You talking to me there?
Yeah.
Sorry, it's cracking up a bit. I can't hear you. Sorry.
It's all right. Frank Warren's best moment in boxing.
Frank Warren's best moment in boxing.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really looked too much into Frank Warren's sort of history in boxing, but I know he's produced a lot of good fighters and he's put on some fights. And I was watching Mike Tyson versus Bruno documentary the other day. I seen Frank Warren was in the front of that, so I suppose he's put on some massive shows of the future in the past. So yeah. So that I'd say big fights like Tyson and Bruno. That I'd say they're probably one of the best moments in his boxing.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think you look back at definitely for Frank Bruno, it sort of made his career what it was. And I think the first fight he performed really well. He actually hurt Tyson, but obviously in the second fight it was I would say a bit of a mismatch. But no, definitely Bruno versus Tyson. You know, those two fights, the way he promoted them was really good. I remember Christy Martin, the female boxer, you know, the lady that everybody says made female boxing what it is, also featured, and that's when kind of female boxing sort of took off. So definitely agree with you on that. Shiney, what's your favorite Frank Warren moment in boxing? What do you think his best moment's been?
Specifically for Warren, I guess it's obviously got to be what he's done with Frank Warren, I would imagine, with Tyson Fury. It's been a miracle what he's worked with him, and obviously that association with Tyson Fury, getting him to bring back the belts and etc. was fantastic. Yeah, so I'd say probably now, historically, that'll probably go down for the next generation after that, will be spoken of in the likes of some of the other light heavyweight legends. So yeah, I'd probably say his involvement with Fury is fantastic.
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, you literally just took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say the Tyson Fury comeback. I mean, what he's done with Tyson Fury, not just inside the ring, but how he's helped his profile grow in America. You know, which heavyweight champion do you see feature on WWE these days? I mean, it's just, he's done an amazing job. And I think prior to Tyson Fury, a lot of people were giving him stick about, oh, he doesn't promote his fighters like this. His fighters never in big fights. He brings back Tyson Fury, and then he takes him to LA, and he puts in that masterclass performance against Deontay Wilder in their first fight. And then he just, you know, he doesn't throw him into a deep end. He just keeps on raising his profile with the whole WWE, the mental awareness. He's an ambassador now for mental health. And then obviously now you've seen Tyson's last few fights have been in America. So I think his best moment in boxing for me has to be the bringing Tyson Fury back into boxing. So I'll agree with Shiney on that. Got a lot to talk about today on this show. Obviously, we'll start off with one of the main talking topics in boxing, and that's Oscar Valdez, the current WBC Super Featherweight champion, has tested positive for a banned substance called Phentermine. The WBC and this commission, which I've never heard of, have sanctioned his bout for, I believe it's tomorrow night against Robson Conceicao. You know what? When I heard this news, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Like, boxing's taken a battering over the last few months for many, many reasons, but I think this one really, really does take the biscuit. Now, everybody's got an opinion, but you fail one drugs test, you kind of give the guy the benefit of the doubt. You wait for the B sample to come back. But then when you fail a second test, I mean, that just says it all for me. And the fact that this commission that I've never heard of, and the WBC, one of the biggest, you know, body governing commissions in boxing, have allowed this fight to go ahead. I mean, like, I like to try and be as fair as possible, but are we sort of forgetting that this is the most dangerous sport in the world? Now we're like more or less saying it's okay to give the defending world champion an upper hand coming into a fight to defend his world title against a mandatory challenger, and he's just failed two drugs tests. I mean, I really, really don't know what to make of it. It is for me, it's disgusting, and something needs to be done. Guys, I want to get your thoughts on this failed drugs test for Oscar Valdez.
Yeah, it's obviously controversial. I know I've seen other people put quite a lot of stuff about it, but yeah, I agree with you. No one likes a drug cheat. The game, as you can see, is already hard enough. I think just recently, obviously, we had a female boxer just pass away after a bout that she had in a ring. And it's how hard that sport is. You know, it's a dangerous sport where boxers do really put their lives on the line sometimes. So for anyone to think that they can have an advantage by using any performance enhancement drug, just really shouldn't even cross anyone's mind. But then for it to be picked up, which is what the reason for the drug testing is there for, and then the bout still be allowed to go for is questionable, definitely.
Now, we've got a few comments from here. Mohsin Gulshi, a guy who appears in our podcast, and he's a member of Team Lights Out, goes, absolutely shameful with how the WBC have reacted. Got another one from one of our biggest fans out there. He's always commenting on our videos. Is the boxing lover. The WBC are the biggest scam artists in boxing. If you don't believe me, then just ask Dillian Whyte. It's a fair point. Macauley, what was your thoughts on when you heard the news of Oscar Valdez failing 2 drugs tests, and with how things have gone on since that, the fact that he's allowed to fight, what have you made of it all?
Yeah, no, it is disgusting, really. Safety's got to be the first protocol in boxing for the boxers. Obviously, we do genuinely put your life on your line. When you're in there, like you don't fight half-heartedly. Like you go out there to do damage at the end of the day, especially in the pro game. Like there's enough damage inflicted on the boxers as it is. You see them finishing the fights with cuts and lumps and bumps everywhere. So for someone to be doped into is going to potentially increase, testing positive for a banned substance. They're obviously doing it for a reason, to get that advantage, like to inflict potentially more harm to your opponent. Like it shouldn't be allowed for one, and like the ban should, in my eyes, the ban should be a lot longer than what it is anyway.
So, someone said on social media the other day that the guy should be given a lifetime ban, and the WBC should be removed from boxing in a whole, because of how not only they've acted with this situation, but what they've done with the likes of Dillian Whyte in the past. And, Maurizio Sulaiman, how he's, made #1 challengers wait longer than they have to. You sort of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But when this is happening, of a current world champion, a fighter like Oscar Valdez, who was involved in one of the fights of the year when he beat Miguel Berchel earlier on during the year. I mean, I'm just, I'm shocked. And listen, I really don't see why this fight is going ahead. I don't see why this fight should be going ahead. Like I said, I'd like to be as fair as possible. But when you're failing 2 drug tests, I think the right answer to this, the right punishment should have been he should have been stripped of the world title. Yeah. And what they should have done is the fight should not be going ahead. Robson Conceicao, he should not be in that fight on Saturday night. If he gets hurt on Saturday night, Tony Bellew said it in one of his interviews, and I agree. If he was to get hurt on Saturday night, this could finish boxing. And I'm just praying to God that this does not happen. I'm praying to God that isn't the case, but this fight should not be going ahead. Whoever this commission is that we've never heard of, you should be ashamed of yourself. But for the WBC, they should know a whole lot better. And for them to sanction this match, to not even strip the guy of his world title, it just says it all about the WBC. One of the main governing bodies that I have a lot of respect for. But let's move on now, because as I mentioned, the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury, the WBC heavyweight champion, done several interviews yesterday, and it was announced that BT Sport will be broadcasting the fight between him and Deontay Wilder on October 9th. It's going to be a pay-per-view event. Never expected anything less. He's got a bit of a hit list, and funnily enough, he's called out Dillian Whyte. We know him and Dillian Whyte have had several back and forths online and social media, but I never really knew it was that serious between them two. But yeah, Macauley, what did you make of him calling out Dillian Whyte, and obviously his new hit list, saying he wants to come back and fight Dillian Whyte and end his career by fighting Derek Chisora in the stadium?
Yeah, I mean, he literally called out everyone. He said it, and anyone and everyone said they can get it. I think it's exciting for the heavyweight division. Like all the lads, especially on the British scale, the heavyweight boxing is at its best in my eyes. Like the fights are all massively exciting. All of them, put any of them together, it's going to be a great fight. It's going to sell out stadium, so it is great for British boxing. I do think though Tyson Fury is on a takeover. I think he's the man to rule the division in my eyes. Anyone you put in front of him, I just think his ability, his boxing brain, just grit, like it's everything about him. But what he's come through is just put him in the best stead to push through in the toughest fights. So I genuinely think that Fury will rule them all and put anybody in front of him, and he'll, whether it's like points or whether he'll take him out like he did against Wilder. Obviously, like he can turn gas when he needs to. Yeah, he's a serious guy in the heavyweight division.
Shiney, obviously the heavyweight division suffered massive heartbreak a couple of months ago when we realised that Deontay Wilder's won this arbitration case, and we'll have to wait slightly a little longer for that undisputed clash between him and Anthony Joshua. But he says that the plan is to get past Wilder and maybe have another fight. I can't see him fighting twice in 4 or 5 months. But I do think what is likely to happen is he beats Wilder, and then hopefully we can get that clash with Joshua. That's if he can beat Alexander Usyk. But do you still believe we get to see that fight between Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua at some point, perhaps mid 2022?
Yeah, it's a big question, and it's a question that's on everyone's minds. But yeah, I do believe we'll see the fight, but I don't think it'll be straightforward, and boxing never is. And everyone thinks that obviously Wilder will get in by Fury, and then AJ will beat Usyk, and then we'll have this massive bout. I do think Fury goes through Wilder, but there's just something about Usyk which could be a little bit risky, I think. And what we may see is one of them losing possibly, and then that might retract, how much of a big fight this is, and then might throw into just the need for it, and they might go in opposite directions. I mean, boxing is that sport that's always filled with surprises, isn't it? I mean, we've seen it numerous times, and I think this could be one of those situations, really. And it's not necessarily even saying that Joshua beats Usyk. Maybe Fury underestimates Wilder this third time. Wilder walks him onto something and he doesn't get up. There's so many variables in these next two bouts. I think it's hard to really look at anything past that.
Yeah, no, look, I agree. Look, for me, I've always believed in heavyweight boxing. Anyone can beat anyone on the night, kind of in any sort of division, but especially this one. I mean, if you rewind back to 2 years ago, did we ever believe Andy Ruiz was going to knock out Anthony Joshua? No, we didn't. And did we ever think Tyson Fury will do what he did to Deontay Wilder in the second fight? I don't think these next two defenses for Joshua and Fury are as easy as people make out. I mean, if you obviously watch social media, you see Deontay Wilder. Now, I know we shouldn't get excited over watching a 1-2 minute clip, but he looks as if he is training very hard for this fight. And I've seen certain things on these clips with Malik Scott that he's doing a lot more body work, he's using a lot more foot movement, he's using his head a lot more. And listen, it could be a troubled time for Tyson Fury. He's had a few family issues outside the ring. We're glad to hear everything is all well, especially with the arrival of his new little daughter. But, these things could potentially play a part. And I'm just hoping, he doesn't get, miscomplacent, because before you know it, we could be getting ready for Fury versus Wilder 4. In terms of Alexander Usyk, Macauley, how much of a chance are you giving him September 25th against Anthony Joshua? Do you honestly believe he can beat Anthony Joshua, or do you think it's just another win for AJ?
I definitely don't think it's just going to be another win for AJ. I think he'll be pushed. I just don't think Usyk will be enough. I've said it to everyone I spoke to about this. I just said it. He won't be big enough. I think AJ's range, he's smart. He's smart at what he's done. The size of him will tell. He's much more athletic in the ring than he has been in previous fights. It's just gonna push him through the fight. I can't really see Usyk getting to him. If he can, then that's all fair play to him. He's a very skillful heavyweight, but is he a heavyweight? Is he actually a heavyweight? When you look at it, yeah. So me personally, I'd say no. I'd like to see him do it. I love a good southpaw, so I'd love to see him do it, but not me personally.
Another good thing that we've as of lately is we've seen a lot of back and forth between Tyson Fury towards Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn. I don't know if you guys watched his interview with Gary Neville on the Overlap the other day, but some of the things he had to say about Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua were very hilarious. And that's one thing about Tyson Fury. He is a very hilarious individual. I'm not going to repeat some of the things he said, but is it now getting to a point where hearing this back and forth between Tyson towards Joshua and Hearn, is it getting a bit, out of control, or do you think they need to do this to sell that fight, to keep that fight relevant? Because I personally look at it and I think, look, yes, everybody likes a bit of needle, and everybody likes to see the fight be a bit spiced up. But I also think at the same time that fight sells itself because, number one, you got two British heavyweights that are fighting for the undisputed champion of the world. I don't think there's any bigger selling point than that. But guys, what's your thoughts on it? Do you think they need to carry on with this back and forth? Is this what sells the fight, or do you think it could be just, you know what, you messed us around, so we can't stand yours? This just Tyson Fury doing what he does best and playing his mind game. Shiney, start with you.
Yeah, I agree with your point there. I don't actually think it's there to sell the fight. I think Tyson Fury just really doesn't like Eddie Hearn and Anthony Joshua. And he is a guy that speaks his mind, and that's exactly what he's doing in those situations. He's just speaking his mind. So I don't think it's actually there. I just think that sees him voicing his opinion about what he thinks about Eddie Hearn, how he carries himself, and what he thinks about Anthony Joshua.
Yeah,
as you said, the fight sells itself. Everyone knows.
Exactly. Listen, when was the last time we was in a position to say we're going to get an undisputed heavyweight title clash and both the fighters are from Britain? You know, I can't remember when was the last time, and I do think Tyson Fury can't stand Eddie Hearn, but I also can see why Eddie Hearn sort of bit at him as of lately. You know, for the last 5 months he was getting hounded by not only just Fury's people, Bob Arum, Frank Warren, the whole of the British public, you know, the boxing world. Are you going to deliver this fight between Fury and Joshua? You can't do it. We're in the middle of a pandemic. And when he gets the deal done, he gets told from Bob Arum, well, we can't take that fight now because we just lost an arbitration case. So I do feel for Eddie Hearn in a way, because he put in so much time and effort in making the fight, and then he misses out due to an arbitration case, and it's not even his fight involved. So you can imagine within those 5 months what he could have done with Joshua. I mean, maybe Joshua could have fought at the beginning of that process when he was trying to make the Joshua Fury fight, and then we could be moving on to Joshua's second fight of the year. So I do feel for Eddie Hearn in a way. Macauley, do you believe that fight between Fury and Joshua does happen regardless if they have the belts or if they don't?
It has to happen, doesn't it? It has to happen for boxing at the end of the day. The greats have got to box the greats, and that's what makes boxing so great. At the end of the day, if it didn't happen, it would be a shame, obviously. I just think that the fight sells. The fight will be probably the biggest fight in boxing history. Like it would be for me anyway. To actually put those two in the ring together, especially at the point of their career they are. The winner takes all, really. Obviously, AJ's had the loss, but what was he in the right frame of mind then? I think it's got to happen. It's got to happen, isn't it?
It's not only got to happen, Macauley. It has to happen. It's owed to boxing fans. You know, this is the fight we want to see. You know, this is the fight that if we had to choose, it would be this one. And listen, I hope it does happen. And you know what? To be honest with you, I'm not even bothered if it's an undisputed clash. I just want to see the fight happen. Got a few comments from Tattoo Face Gaming. Ask Shiney, is he decent at Warzone? I'm gonna let you guys discuss that. Fury is a legend, and the trash talk is what gets the undecided people interested. Fair comment. I think, you know, listen, a lot of people didn't really like Derek Chisora, but they did like him after he threw a table at Dillian Whyte. You know, I remember if you look back on that actual video on YouTube, there's a lot of comments saying didn't really know much about this Chisora guy. But what I did know is I never liked him at the beginning, but now it seems very entertaining. I can't see Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua throwing a table at each other, but what I can see is Tyson Fury just playing, you know, constant mind games in the build-up to that fight. Listen, fingers crossed that fight does happen. But as we said at the start of this topic, they both have to get through their title defenses. October 9th and September 25th. We'll move on because we'll talk about another British rivalry which is brewing up again. Billy Joe Saunders, the two-weight world champion, wants £5 million to fight Chris Eubank Jr. News broke to us last week that Chris Eubank Jr. signed a contract with Sky Sports. Billy Joe Saunders, we haven't heard much of him since that devastating loss to Canelo Alvarez, but we have to look at it in two ways. One, Billy Joe Saunders has never really been much of an active fighter. And two, Chris Eubank Jr. really wants that rematch because he believes he's better than Billy Joe Saunders. And to be honest with you, it is a fight that I would like to see again. But first of all, guys, let's just talk a bit about Billy Joe Saunders. As I just said, we haven't seen much of him since that defeat to Canelo Alvarez. Now, he done an interview with TalkSport today. And he said in that interview, this is the only fight that I want. Give me £5 million, I'll take the fight. It's the only fight that makes sense to me. Those were pretty much his words. But do you look at this Eubank Jr. fight and really believe that this is the fight that makes sense to him? Or is there potential other fights out there that he could be considering right now?
I don't think Joe Saunders really wants to be much longer after that Canelo defeat and some of the injuries that he sustained. So is this the fight that makes sense from a business point of view? Yes. And boxing is professional boxing is a business. And he wants 5 million. Will he get 5 million anywhere else? For other bouts, probably not. That domestic rivalry sells as a rematch. And I think it goes pretty much the same way the first time. So it's a safe bout for him at the same time as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, but look, Shadi, I've got to agree to some sort of extent. I actually think there are still 4 or 5 fights out there he could consider. One is the Demetrius Andrade fight. 2 is, I think, a Golovkin fight. You know, I think these young middleweights, super middleweights should be looking at Golovkin right now. I think this is the perfect time to get in the ring with him. There's a potential fight with Charlo. You know, there's Benavidez up at super middleweight. There's still fights out there for him. But if he's saying, look, this is the fight that's going to make the money for him, and this is what he wants to bow out, then look, fair play to him. At least he's not, you know, trying to fob off the British press. The British public. Macauley, what is the right move next for Billy Joe Saunders, especially after the defeat to Canelo Alvarez?
Well, I think it's box Eubank and get out. You know, get your money and get out for me. He has been very inactive over the years. The chance to get that kind of money, I mean, in my eyes, he does deserve that kind of money. To be fair, he built up a hype for the Canelo fight. Obviously, it didn't go to plan for him, but I didn't really think he would have had much chance against Canelo either way, really. But I do think that the Eubank fight would be a great fight for the British public, but the will really again a fight like that, the rivalry they did build up on the first one. And I mean, Eubank got to him a few times in the first one. I mean, he tried his best to give it to him. So I mean, you got to give credit where credit's due. Like, and give him the rematch, I'd say.
I was discussing what you just said, something about Eubank Jr., which I just want to touch on. I was discussing this the other day with a friend of mine who's also into his boxing, and he goes, the only real main guy out there right now that would genuinely try and knock Canelo out is Eubank Jr. because of how he fights. I actually have to agree with that as well, because many fighters have fought Canelo in the last 3-4 years on his way to becoming the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. And you have to really question, have many of those fighters turned up believing they could actually win? Now, regardless of what you say about Eubank Jr., okay, so he's a bit arrogant towards who's ever in his corner. But I actually do think he is the one guy that would turn up to fight Canelo and be like, you know what, I'm actually genuinely going to come and try and knock you out. Others have tried fighting Canelo, and they've tried beating technically they tried beating him with simple boxing IQ. It's not really happened. The good thing about Eubank Jr. is he's the guy that will literally throw everything, including the kitchen sink, to the very last second of a fight. So that's what I think is very, very exciting with Eubank Jr. And it is going to be interesting to see how his career pans out with Roy Jones in his corner. We've only seen him fight once, so it is going to be really interesting to see what happens next. But having said that, I can't see another fight with Billy Joe Saunders happening. I'm a big Billy Joe Saunders fan. I'm a massive fan of his style. I actually thought he performed quite decent against Canelo up until the fight got stopped. But I just think Billy Joe Saunders, I can't see him fighting again. I really wish he does carry on fighting and he does get in the ring with the opponents that I've mentioned. But I just can't see it happening. I just think he's made good money now, 2-weight world champion. I just think he looks at it and thinks there's nothing more that I need to achieve or prove. But I personally would love to see him carry on fighting. Shiney, does this fight happen in your opinion?
Yeah, I do. I think it happens purely because they've taken on Chris Eubank Jr., haven't they? And they've got this new big deal with Boxer, and they're making a big statement with Chris Eubank Jr. being one of their main boxers. And I think that bout with Billy Joe Saunders is the one really some loyalty for them. And I think when you're starting out with that new deal, it makes business sense for Sky to try and push that. So I think that if there was ever a time that somebody would pay Billy Joe Saunders $5 million, I think it would be now under this new deal.
Yeah, definitely. And as a lot of people in the media have been saying that obviously Sky Sports without Eddie Hearn and his crop of fighters are going to need a massive fight to sort of kickstart this new era that they've got. But when you look at some of the names they've got, it's really exciting times. We touched on this in our last podcast. Macauley, Billy Joe Saunders versus Chris Eubank Jr. 2. Is it a fight that you want to see? Do you think it happens?
Yeah. I mean, as I said, it's another one of them that should happen. I mean, Eubank, if wants to rematch Billy Joe Saunders, obviously, he's not in the position where he really needs the rematch as such. But if they can offer the money that he's looking for, it'd be a no-brainer. I'd like to see it myself, but I do like Chris Eubank and I do like Billy Joe Saunders. So to put them both in the ring together would be a good fight. I think it'd be an entertaining fight, to say the least. Yeah, I think Eubank will get to Billy Joe. I think I think he's kind of like not lost as such. He's still got it there. Obviously, like you say, against Canelo, he started well, but has he been active enough? Has he been able to sustain that? Can he do the full 12 against someone who is going to press him for the full fight and keep it entertaining?
It's good to see with the age that they both at as well, that they've still a potential great domestic clash in the 160, 168 division. And I can't see it happening. I just think too many egos involved. And I personally do think Eubank Jr. right now, if he got offered a chance to fight a Golovkin or a Canelo rather than a Billy Joe Saunders, I think for his career, it probably makes more sense to go forward rather than to a past opponent that he's fought as well. Tattoo Face Gaming as well. What's your views on Trump getting into boxing? Well, that is our next topic because the former US President Donald Trump is to join the Triller commentary team for Evander Holyfield versus Vitor Belfort this Saturday night at the Hard Rock Cafe on the sort of Legends card. Originally, it was meant to be Oscar De La Hoya versus Vitor Belfort, but Oscar De La Hoya unfortunately caught COVID. We hope he's getting well and we wish him a speedy recovery. Before we talk a bit about this Legends card that we've got on Saturday night, let's talk about the former US president. When I read it yesterday, I don't know whether to cringe or whether to cry. Donald Trump commentating for a legend like Evander Holyfield. Macauley, we've seen some pretty iffy moves happen in boxing as of late. We've seen Jake Paul, rising up in boxing. What do you make of Donald Trump coming into the sport? Not only just as a commentator, but also a guy that's going to commentate for a legend like Evander Holyfield.
Yeah, it is what it is. Boxing's turned, it's entertainment now, isn't it? There's too much money flying around people's pockets for things like this not to happen, really. I think like money. No, it does not taken over in boxing, but obviously it is at the head of most professional sports. Where there's money, there'll be entertainment. Like I think Trump being on involved is just another one of them, and it's just to bring more viewers. Like especially with the very recent history with Trump, it's just going to bring more viewers to boxing, which might not be a bad thing as such. Doesn't sit well associating with the legends of the game. I don't like that really. But yeah, if you're bringing more people to boxing, if it's going to bring more people to boxing up and down the levels like and the coverage, I can't see it really being a bad thing.
Yeah, I'm just hoping he doesn't turn around midway through the fight and start talking about the Mexican wall and how the Mexicans should pay for it. I'm just really hoping he doesn't say anything controversial because he's a very controversial character. Shiney, you're a big boxing fan, as I can tell by following you on social media. What was your take on hearing Donald Trump's going to be commentating for Evander Holyfield versus Vitor Belfort?
Yeah, I think I'd probably echo what Macauley said, to be honest. I think I saw Tyson Fury put something up earlier today where he commented on the fact of everyone going mad about YouTubers and Jake Paul and etc. boxing. And he said, if it's bringing viewers that that wouldn't normally watch boxing to watch boxing, then I guess it's got to be good for everyone in the sport. And you can see that a little with Jake Paul, but my only issue with Donald Trump is probably the controversy around what he actually stands for, what he was brought into presidency for. And then that coupled with commentating with somebody like on somebody like Evander Holyfield, I don't know, there's the argument something wrong could be said at any given point, and I don't know what the repercussions of that would be. So yeah, it's a real iffy for me. Instruction goal. It depends what Donald Trump ends up really as to how good it's going to be for the sport. Because what we don't want to be is the headlines to be around what Donald Trump said, as opposed to witnessing Evander Holyfield back in the ring again, a legend.
100%. You know, it's not every day you get to see a legend like Evander Holyfield get back in the ring, and I really do hope it all works out for him on Saturday night. And I really, really hope that it's not shown by. I just hope we don't look back on the event and people are like, oh, but forget the fight itself. Do you remember what Trump said during commentary and Trump said during after commentary? You know, I mean, Triller, I'll take my hats off to them. I think they've done a brilliant job in terms of putting these events on. You know, the amount of money that they're coming up with, especially at a time during like this, you know, we're still sort of in the pandemic. You know, from what I'm hearing, David Hayes getting more money for this fight with Joe Fournier on Saturday night than he did with his second fight against Tony Bellew. So you can't knock them for what they've done for some of the names that they've got in their card. But at the same time, you have to like sort of question Donald Trump. You know, this is a guy that, you know, was everyone, especially the majority of the US public, were glad to see the back of him when he lost the US elections, you know, and everybody didn't agree with his philosophy and his time in charge. But he is a very controversial character. But having said that, I can't really see him saying something out of the unordinary come Saturday night, and I really hope he doesn't say it. But you know, let's forget about Donald Trump. Let's talk a bit about the fight itself. Evander Holyfield versus Vitor Belfort. It was originally meant to be Oscar De La Hoya fighting Vitor Belfort, as I mentioned, but he contracted COVID. We've seen a few clips of Evander Holyfield on social media, hitting the pads, doing a bit of workout. It's a 59-year-old Evander Holyfield. You know, let's remember that. It's not a young Evander Holyfield. It's not the same Evander Holyfield that achieved so many great things. Where do you guys stand on guys like Holyfield and Tyson and Roy Jones coming back into sport at such a late age and taking these exhibitions? We'll start off with you, Macauley.
I think, yeah, like I said, for the entertainment value of it, like it's obviously that they are massive names, they're legends in the game. So like some of the best, but they're well past it. Like I don't think it's good for. I think it was a shame watching Tyson back then, because he just wasn't half of what he was back in the day. I mean, for me, I think they should leave it where they were, like the clips and the videos, and you got your highlight reels of what they were. They'll not be anything near to that. So the modern era aren't actually experiencing them for the best. They're getting to see them in the ring. Don't get me wrong, it's good. They're trying to give it another go. I don't really know what for, because they've had their best days in boxing. Yeah, so that's my opinion. Maybe maybe they shouldn't be at it really.
Shiney, what's your thoughts on Evander Holyfield, a 59-year-old Evander Holyfield, not only coming back into boxing but taking this fight on 2 weeks' notice? Bear in mind, a lot of people will be watching this fight because it does fall on September the 11th, and it is seen as a celebration for the 9/11 tragedy.
Yeah, so I just wanted to firm, is it being classed as an exhibition bout, or is it an actual
exhibition? Yeah,
bout?
No, it's an exhibition bout.
Exhibition.
Yeah, but when you say exhibition, we seen Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr. in an exhibition, and Mike Tyson was treating it like it was a normal fight for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, true. Yeah. I guess it brings some questions in allowing somebody like Evander Holyfield at 59 years old, especially again, I'll bring up again, somebody passed away a few weeks ago, a Mexican girl, in a bout, and regardless of it being an exhibition or an actual contest, people are taking blows to the head, and at 59 years old, that can't be healthy for anyone, really, can it?
No.
So that's the be all and end all. Yes, there's some money value. Yes, there's some entertainment, but does that outweigh the risk of somebody sustaining some injury at 60 years old?
Yeah,
Especially on
listen,
2 weeks' notice as well.
Do you know what it is, right? Someone said to me, a trainer, I can't remember which trainer said to me, he goes that when a fighter retires from boxing, they never really retire. The love they still have for the sport, the burn inside, the fire inside them that they still have never goes. And I think it's just that, that temptation.
I agree with that. But then there's other avenues, isn't there? People start coaching, people start mentoring. There's so many other avenues to keep you involved in this sport so you've finished actually competing, that there shouldn't really be the need for you to have to go back in commentary, punditry, loads of avenues. You've seen a number of boxers now that are finished, that are still involved in the sport quite heavily, but they aren't being punched in the face for it.
100%, I agree with you on that. And I just look at it and I just think it's just that temptation to dance under the lights one more time. And I hope he doesn't get hurt on Saturday night. I hope it's just a little tap session, a little nip and tuck sparring session, and that's it. Having said that, I'm looking forward to seeing David Haye and Joe Fournier get it on. You can tell that there's a bit of bad blood between them two. And of course, David Haye was sort of teasing us, saying that if he puts in a good performance on Saturday night, he might carry on doing this. Listen, it's crazy times, but as I said, yes, there's a talk of Bellew. He goes, he'd love to fight Klitschko again. I mean, look, these guys are fighters. Macauley will tell you himself, Shiney, you work in the industry 24/7. That temptation just doesn't seem to want to go away with some people. So, listen, good luck to Evander, Vitor, and the rest of the guys featured on that card. And let's just hope Mr. Donald Trump doesn't take the limelight. Final topic, we'll talk a bit about some of the guys that have joined us today, the futures of Aaron Bowen and Macauley Owen. Aaron obviously could not see out to the end of the podcast due to technical issues. So we'll talk a bit about Macauley, start off with him. Macauley, we started off this podcast by talking about the guy that promotes you, Mr. Frank Warren. So talk to us, how did that all come about, you getting promoted by Frank Warren? And what's the plan for the next 18 months with you in Queensbury?
So I had a good few years in the senior game of my amateur career. Won a fair few gold medals in a few tournaments. So I really stamp my place at the top of the amateur game, I think. Pre-COVID, we was going in the obviously elite ABAs, the top nationals, expecting to win. I was going in there for nothing less. And then obviously COVID struck, so put us on hold really, and that was the chance. Then I saw where I was in the amateur game. I really felt like I was getting close to the top of the game on the English scene. So yeah, we just thought, why not dip into it with the professional game. We obviously got in touch with my manager, Errol Johnson, to see what we could do, see whether it worth making the transition and turning over. So obviously, yeah, that's how we got in connection with Frank Warren. So we got that, and obviously now post COVID, we debuts the 9th of October. It's just the start really. We've been put back a few times, but we've been training flat out the whole way through. There's been no stop. I could do a break probably. But yeah, other than that, we're well ready to go. We've transitioned. We've changed the style a fair bit, making sure we're punching a lot harder, much more aggressive in the style. Obviously, like we've been mentioning throughout this podcast, boxing's entertainment. At the end of the day, you got to entertain the viewers. You got to entertain those who are watching. It's all good winning a fight by boxing long and being the smart fighter, but what's going to bring people to the screens? What's going to get them watching you?
Shiny, how much praise and credit do you give to people like Macauley, who've obviously have got that big promotional deal, but have also had to be patient and calm due to the pandemic, due to dates getting rolled back? How much praise do you give the guy for the hard work and for the patience that he's shown over the last 18 months, especially during lockdown?
Yeah, I mean, it's massive. The sport is difficult, as we all know, but psychologically to then be able to keep professional, maintain your nutrition and your strength and conditioning and your training without really knowing what the future holds in reality, how long we were going to be off for. We were still kind of having that little break and then thinking we were going to go back into the amateurs again, but then it just prolonged and prolonged and prolonged, and then the decision was made that it would be better to turn over because of the length of time it took until a tournament was going to be available in the amateurs again. So, I mean, I take my hat off to not only Macauley, but a number of boxers that have had to wait a massive time to get that opportunity to box again. And even more so with Macauley, I mean, we fell unfortunate with a date in August, which then fell through. So then you've got to look at being out for almost 16 months, getting to the point where you're almost ready to box, and that be pulled, and then a new date being given to you, almost 8-10 weeks later. But credit to Macauley, he stuck at it in fantastic shape. I mean, we were discussing today. We took a picture in the gym today, and the kid looks like he's ready to weigh in on the scales tomorrow if he wanted to. So yeah. But I think that will show when he boxes. He has taken this very seriously. We aren't in here to just play games. If that's the case, then we wouldn't be entering into the program. We've set some goals, and I truly do believe that he will achieve those goals.
Macauley, not on obviously the pressure's always on whenever you get in the ring, as I can imagine, but debuts on October 9th. We're hearing that Yard Offer 2 could fall on that card as well. But also a few hours later, you've got Fury versus Wilder. So a lot of people are going to be glued into BT Sport that night. So how much more excitement does that give you? Not only that you've had to wait, but also it's on the same night as the highly anticipated rematch between Anthony Yard and Lyndon Arthur, and of course the third fight between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Surely you've got to go in there and put on a very explosive performance come October the 9th.
Yeah, that word explosive, what I'll keep referring to myself as, like in that the performance that day is going to be that, because we're going to make a statement. We're coming fresh onto the scene. It's going to go off with a bang. It's going to be explosive. Like I said, to be put back from the August show, I was absolutely devastated. But then to find out I'm on such a big card now, it just sets us up in better stead. Like he keeps saying to everyone, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm punching harder than I ever have it in my life. So what better way to come onto the scene as to be on that card?
Well, listen, mate. It's a great chance. It's a great chance to really, show the world what you're made of. Because, like I said, there's going to be a lot of people glued into BE Sports that night. And Shiney, we just talked to us a bit about Aaron, as I mentioned before. Due to technical issues, you couldn't see out the rest of the podcast. But he's currently with Team GB. He's got Paris 2024 on his mind. What can you see him achieving come the next Olympics? And is there a potential chance he may even look to turn pro before that?
Yeah, so Aaron's a fantastic, as is Macauley. I mean, if we're looking at it, he was senior elite ABAs at 21 years old, which is a fantastic feat. Tri-Nation gold medalist. He'd won a youth Commonwealth gold in the Bahamas, 17 years old. So he's proven nationally and internationally. He was Ben Whittaker's chief sparring partner 3 weeks out of the games before GB set off. Ben, a fantastic talent who went out and won an Olympic silver medal. So that kind of shows the caliber of where Aaron's at such a young age. If we're looking at the future, then I think before Paris, you've got to look at next year. A massive opportunity in Birmingham at the Commonwealth Games, Senior Commonwealth Games. Aaron's already won a youth Commonwealth gold. He's a Midland kid. with the opportunity to possibly be able to box in for what would be a home crowd for Aaron. So I think that's the goal that we're looking at the minute. That's where he's setting himself to be in contention to be going to the Commonwealth Games next year. And then obviously, should we do well, should we get picked, then there's the opportunity, obviously, to have those discussions about Paris. But there's some fantastic opportunities out there for Aaron. He's not short of options, to be honest. So we are very much on the for the Commonwealth Games at this minute in time, and then we'll see what the future holds.
Well, listen, Team GB had a great Tokyo Olympics. You know, that really does set the path for these next up and coming fighters to have a great Olympics out in Paris. And of course, as you mentioned, you've got the Commonwealth Games. So, you know, hats off to the youngsters out there that are working ever so hard to try and make Paris. And, you know, I'm pretty sure if whoever does make these final decisions could take everybody on that plane, then they would. But it is a very difficult process, especially when you're around Team GB. But it does wonders for these guys when they do eventually decide to turn pro. And you only have to look at fighters such as, you know, Anthony Joshua, Josh Boatsy, Lawrence Coley, Amir Khan, you know, that have come through the Olympic route. And don't forget Floyd Mayweather, you know, Andre Ward, all these guys, Alexander Usyk, they all come through the Olympic route. They've gone on to have tremendous careers. So massive shout out to Aaron, and of course, massive shout out to Macauley and yourself, Shiney. And listen, fingers crossed, Macauley, October 9th is an explosive start to your career. And Shiney, also fingers crossed to Aaron heading over to the Commonwealth Games as well. That's obviously all we've got time for on today's podcast. I could tell Macauley looks absolutely shattered. He did mention to me on Messenger on Instagram, he's had quite a few sessions at the gym today, but he's going to try and keep up. So listen, I think he deserves another shout out for going from start to finish. Shiny's definitely working these boys to the very, very end in the gym. Shiney, Macauley, guys, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us. And if you want to know more about Shiney and Macauley, and of course Aaron, their social media links are below in the description. Make sure you give them a follow and make sure you check out October the 9th, because not only have we got Wilder versus Fury 3, not only have we hopefully got Yard versus Lyndon Arthur 2, we've also got another fine prospect starting off in the pro side of boxing. And if you want to listen to this podcast on Spotify, the link is going to be below in the description. And make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you give us a follow on all the social media platforms. And that's all we've got time for today. Thank you for listening to podcast 39 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.